You feel it, don't you? That surge of frustration, that wave of anxiety, that knot of anger tightening in your gut. And you do what you think you're supposed to. You lock it down. You grit your teeth and tell yourself, be strong, be stoic. You shove the feeling into a dark corner of your mind, believing that mental toughness means feeling nothing at all. You picture a stone bust of Marcus Aurelius, impassive, cold, serene, and you try to become that stone. But that's the lie. That is the great misunderstanding of an ancient wisdom, and it's the very thing that is making you weaker. True Stoicism was never about suppressing your feelings. It was about something far more difficult and far more powerful. It was about mastery. There's this idea in our culture of what it means to be stoic, usually with a lowercase s, just an adjective for someone who's unfeeling, who endures hardship without a word, who wears a mask of indifference. This little s stoicism has become a synonym for being a cold, emotionless robot, for achieving a kind of self-induced numbness to avoid pain. It's an attractive idea, isn't it? In a world that feels so chaotic and emotionally charged, the promise of an internal off switch is deeply seductive. We're drawn to this caricature of Stoicism because it seems to offer the ultimate protection. If we can just stop feeling the anxiety, the hurt, the disappointment, then nothing can touch us. We think that by building a wall high enough, we can create a fortress of peace. We chase this ideal of the unfeeling warrior, thinking we're walking the path of the ancient philosophers. But this couldn't be further from the truth. This popular image is a distortion, a shadow of the real thing. The great Stoics, men like Seneca, Epictetus, and the Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius, were not unfeeling men. They were leaders, advisors, former slaves, and friends who lived in the thick of life. They felt the full spectrum of human emotion: grief, love, frustration, and joy. Their writings aren't manuals on how to turn off your heart, they're guides on how to strengthen it. The ancient Stoics knew that our deep emotions are the natural results of our beliefs and judgments. As Seneca put it, these passions can be a kind of temporary madness, and you can't just will them away any more than you can will yourself to stop breathing. So, the lie is this: that Stoicism demands you become numb, that strength is found in denial, and peace is found in absence. This isn't just wrong, it's dangerous. Because what most people are practicing isn't Stoicism at all. It's just plain old emotional repression. And repression is not a path to strength, it's a direct route to weakness. When you consistently push your feelings down, you're not solving them, you're just storing them. Think of your mind like a pressure cooker. Every time you suppress a feeling, anger, fear, sadness, you're just clamping the lid down tighter and turning up the heat. On the surface, everything might look calm and controlled, but inside, the pressure is building. And keeping that lid on takes a ton of energy. It's a constant, draining battle you fight with yourself every single day. That's not a source of strength, it's a source of chronic, hidden stress that weakens your resolve and fogs your mind. The philosophy of repression is fundamentally based on fear. Fear of pain, fear of discomfort, fear of what our emotions might do if we let them out. It's an act of avoidance, not courage. And that pressure cooker can only hold for so long. Eventually, that pressure has to go somewhere. For some, it's a sudden, uncontrollable outburst of rage over something tiny. For others, it's a slow leak of chronic anxiety, depression, or just a general sense of numbness and disconnection from life. See, when you refuse to acknowledge your feelings, you don't just numb the pain, you numb everything. Joy gets muted, connections feel distant, and life starts to lose its color. You become a stranger to yourself, unable to read your own internal landscape because you've spent so long pretending it isn't there. This approach sabotages the very thing you're after. You want resilience, but you build a brittle facade that can shatter under pressure. You want peace, but you create a constant inner war. You want to be a fortress, but instead, you become a prison. The great irony is that in trying to be stoic, you're doing the exact opposite of what the Stoics advised. You're letting your unexamined feelings control you from the shadows, making you reactive, fragile, and ultimately, weaker. So if suppression is the lie, what's the truth? The truth is that genuine Stoicism, let's call it big S Stoicism, is not about emotional absence, it's about emotional mastery. It's not about not feeling, it's about how you respond to what you feel. The Stoics were brilliant psychologists who understood that our emotional turmoil doesn't come from events themselves, but from the way we judge those events. As Epictetus famously said, "It's not things that upset us, but our judgment about things." The goal isn't to become a stone, but to build what the Stoics called the inner citadel, an internal fortress of reason and calm that can withstand any storm. And this fortress isn't built by denying your emotions, but by understanding them. It's built through practice. This leads us to the true Stoic path. It's not a path of suppression, but of transformation. Let's explore the real lessons for building genuine, unshakable strength. The first step in true Stoic practice is to admit that you can't control the initial flicker of an emotion. The Stoics called these first movements, the involuntary physical flashes we have to events. A sudden noise makes you jump. An insult makes your face flush. Bad news makes your stomach drop. These are natural reflexes. Even a perfect Stoic sage would experience these. The mistake we make is to fight this first movement. We feel that flash of anger and immediately try to crush it, judging ourselves for even feeling it. The Stoic, however, does something different. They observe it. This practice is all about creating a tiny bit of space between the stimulus and your response. You feel the anger, the fear, or the sadness rise, and instead of getting swept away by it or violently suppressing it, you just notice it. You say to yourself, "Ah, there is anger," or "I am feeling the sensation of anxiety." You acknowledge it without judgment, like a cloud passing through the sky of your mind. Seneca advised treating our initial impressions like a gatekeeper checking visitors. You don't have to let every thought in. You can pause, observe it, and ask, "Is this true? Is this helpful? Is this up to me?" By doing this, you stop identifying with the emotion. You are not your anger, you are the one experiencing the anger. This small shift is monumental. It moves you from being a victim of your feelings to being an observer of them. This is the first step toward taking back your power. Once you learn to observe your emotions without jumping to react, you can bring in one of Stoicism's most powerful tools, the dichotomy of control. Epictetus taught that some things are up to us and some are not. What's up to us are our own judgments, our intentions, our responses. What's not up to us are external events, other people's opinions, and even our own bodies. So, how does this apply to feelings? That initial first movement of an emotion is largely not up to you. It just happens. But what happens next? The story you tell yourself about that feeling, the judgment you attach to it, and the actions you take because of it, that is entirely within your control. This is the crucial difference between feeling a pang of anger and choosing to become an angry person. The pang is an impression. Becoming an angry person is an act of assent. It's the decision to endorse that initial feeling, to feed it with resentful thoughts, and to let it dictate your behavior. This is where the Stoic uses reason. Not to say, I shouldn't feel this, but to ask, what judgment is causing this feeling? And is that judgment true? Let's say a colleague criticizes your work. That initial sting of embarrassment is a first movement. Repression says, don't feel this, toughen up. But Stoicism asks you to examine the judgment. Are you thinking, this criticism means I am a total failure? That's a judgment. And is it true? Is one person's opinion the absolute measure of your worth? Of course not. By applying the dichotomy of control, you realize you can't control the criticism, but you can control whether you agree with the judgment that it defines you. You can choose to see it as an opinion, extract anything useful, and discard the rest. This isn't suppression. It's a deliberate process of emotional management. You're not ignoring the feeling, you're disarming it by correcting the false belief that gives it power. This brings us to the deepest and most transformative part of Stoic practice. The Stoics believed that our most destructive emotions, what they called the pathe, or passions, are almost always born from false judgments about what's good and bad. We feel intense fear because we judge that losing a job would be an absolute catastrophe. We feel consuming anger because we judge that being disrespected is an intolerable evil. So, true Stoic practice isn't about fighting the emotions themselves. It's about finding and correcting the faulty judgments at their root. This changes everything. It's no longer a battle of willpower, it's an exercise in wisdom. You become a detective of your own mind, tracing the feeling back to the thought that created it. Marcus Aurelius was a master of this. His book, Meditations, is filled with him practicing this reframing. He didn't just see betrayal as a personal attack, but as the act of someone who was ignorant about what is truly good. He taught himself to see obstacles not as roadblocks, but as opportunities to practice virtue. His thinking is captured in the now famous line, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." The next time you feel a powerful negative emotion, don't suppress it. Get curious. Ask yourself, what do I believe is true right now that is making me feel this way? Challenge that belief. Is this truly a catastrophe or just an inconvenience? Is this situation really ruining everything, or is it simply an unexpected turn you can navigate? When you reframe the judgment, the emotion often dissolves on its own. You haven't pushed it down, You've pulled the plug and let its energy drain away because it no longer has a false belief to sustain it. Finally, we have to fix the single biggest mistake that leads to the great Stoic lie. The ultimate goal of Stoic practice is a state called apatheia. And because it looks and sounds like our word apathy, we assume they mean the same thing. They don't. In fact, they're almost opposites. Modern apathy is a negative state. It's indifference, burnout, or numbness born from hopelessness. It's checking out of life. Stoic apatheia is completely different. The Greek prefix a means without, and pathos refers to those destructive, irrational passions we just talked about. So, apatheia means freedom from irrational passion. It is not an absence of feeling. It is a state of profound inner peace and calm, especially when things get tough. A much better translation is equanimity. The Stoic sage isn't an emotionless robot. They've just weeded out the destructive emotions like blinding rage, paralyzing fear, and corrosive envy. And what remains are what the Stoics called eupatheiai, or good feelings. Rational, healthy emotions like joy, goodwill, and a deep sense of care. A true Stoic is capable of deep love and friendship. They just don't let their inner peace depend on other people. They can experience loss and feel sadness without being shattered by it. Apatheia isn't emotional detachment. It's the clarity that allows for wise and compassionate engagement with the world. It's the stable foundation that lets you act with courage, no longer jerked around by every unexamined feeling. It is the quiet strength of the deep ocean, not the turbulent, reactive surface. For too long, we've confused mental toughness with the brute force of emotional suppression. We've been sold a lie that to be strong, we must be hard, that to be at peace, we must be numb. This is the Stoic lie, a caricature that has led countless people down a path not of strength, but of quiet desperation and inner fragility. The real Stoic path is more challenging and infinitely more rewarding. It doesn't ask you to deny your humanity, it asks you to elevate it. It teaches that emotions are not enemies to be defeated, but messengers to be understood, signals pointing to the underlying judgments that shape your reality. Strength isn't found in the brittle facade of someone who claims to feel nothing. It's found in the quiet resilience of someone who has learned to feel everything without being controlled by anything. It is the ability to observe your anger without becoming it, the wisdom to examine your fear without surrendering to it, the courage to reframe your pain into growth. True Stoic strength is flexible, resilient, and deeply human. It's the courage to feel everything, joy, grief, anger, and love, without being a slave to any of it. It's the wisdom to know the difference between a destructive passion and a rational emotion. This is the work. This is how you build the inner citadel, brick by brick. Not a fortress of denial, but a sanctuary of wisdom, a place of genuine, unshakable strength and enduring peace.